This podcast is intended solely for blind and visually impaired audiences and is brought to you by the Radio Talking Book Service in Omaha, Nebraska.
It's time now for today's edition of Community Conversations on Radio Talking Book. This is the program where we dialogue with voices from the Omaha community. And here is the host of Community Conversations, Stephanie Patzer.
Today for Community Conversations, we have Jennifer Charleston with Be Tactile in the studio. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are the founder of Be Tactile. Can you share a bit more about yourself and what led you to your company?
Absolutely. So Be Tactile was born out of a season of walking through my own medical trials with just a lot of unknowns. And I was at a local Brain Injury Alliance meeting and learned about a need within the blind community, came in and spoke with their students going through independent services. And I asked, so what's available within the blind community to make paper greeting cards? And they said nothing. And I was astonished and annoyed all at the same time. And that really is how Be Tactile is born, and now it's developed into a couple different programs.
Well, and we're going to get into that more specifically. So I thank you for sharing how it came to be. I wanted to ask a question that came up when you were just saying that. Were you a lover of greeting cards, or how did the whole spark of greeting cards per se come to be?
Absolutely. So I had to medically retire at the age of 32. Not the plan that I had, but through that, I started making pop-up greeting cards. And that's really where the idea or the question came of, so what's available for all abilities to be able to make greeting cards simple or extravagant, because I feel like it should be accessible.
Was there a specific aha moment when you realized standard cards weren't meeting the needs of blind or low vision recipients?
Yes, very early on when I was doing that discovery, there's options for Braille-like cards, but there's very limited tactile cards outside of Braille cards. And I was focused on this other side of the business that I had at the time, creating pop-up greeting cards, which I loved. And I thought, no, I don't need to do anything. And God starts to download this entire program, which is now the Impression Studio program and the Tactile Treasure program. And I was like, but I've got this other gig. I'm okay, thanks. But God persisted, as he does, and continued to put this program in my brain. And at the time, I struggled with memory. And so I was like, I have to write this down right now so I don't lose any of it, because at that point it was, I really have to do this. It was a situation of having no background for it, but being qualified nonetheless to create Be Tactile.
So really quick, when you say, did you say pop-up greeting cards? Am I doing that right? What does that mean?
So they're greeting cards that are more 2D to 3D, past your simple greeting card, that are very tactile with at least 3 layers and levels. And I didn't know that they were tactile at the time when I was making them, but I just found so much joy in being able to keep my hands busy in those seasons of unknown. And so there's combination between the adhesive and the paper that makes them multiple layered and pop up, whether they kind of jump out of the envelope or box or just a standard, kind of press it open sort of card.
So the card itself, so tactile means a feeling, like you can feel it. It's more of a feeling with the hands. That's tactile, correct? There's movement with your hands?
Correct.
Okay, and so the card itself then has items upon it, like you said, that make it 2 or 3 dimensional, and you can feel them.
Yes.
Very cool. And we already touched on this, but I wanted to double check. So you do not necessarily have a background in card design. This was new to you as far as your creative outlet to building cards, and then it transferred transformed into also building cards where it was accessible as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
So based on passion then became your career, which is like pretty ideal.
It really is. I mean, who doesn't want to make cards? Well, I guess if you feel like you're not creative, but absolutely.
So per your website, Be Tactile is a DIY or do-it-yourself greeting card designed for blind and low vision creators. Can you expand upon that?
Yes, so we have 2 programs on our website on betactile.co, and the full program is a step-by-step introducing different paper types, adhesives, and how to use kind of the old school crank AccuCut die cut machine, if you will. And that one is very immersive, very independent. And then the other program, Tactile Treasure, it's a quarterly subscription box. Anyone can try just a card out one at a time or sign up and just be able to receive it until they don't want it anymore. So in the quarterly box, everything is pre-cut and pre-adhesive unless you prefer liquid glue, and I do have a couple people that do. But you get 6 cards total every quarter, 3 different designs. I try sometimes to offer kind of more of a masculine version and more of a feminine version because we do have guys in our lives that, do need to be appreciated. So that way we always kind of cover all the bases. And then we also try to cover each of the holidays as much as possible in that season. And then some of those cards are only available in the subscription box, but then some of them sometimes are available as individuals if someone wants to try it out, dip their feet a little bit, figure it out. And then in addition, every single card, whether you get just an individual card or the full set, is accessible instructions on how to put it together in video, audio, and written instruction.
Wow, so you're checking a lot of boxes.
I'm trying. Oh, and there's Braille greetings available to match the design of the card also.
So just for our audience to clarify a few things. So you're not a website to necessarily go buy a card for your friend that's low vision or blind. This is somebody who's interested in buying a kit to make a card. And it's accessible for anybody to actually make the card and or be a receiver of a card that's accessible.
Absolutely, yes. They're kits to make to just kind of have some screen-free time even also.
Why is it even important that greeting card crafting be accessible?
I mean, I guess, my spin-off question is, shouldn't cell phones be accessible to be able to, interact as fully sighted people can? I took the same approach, and as I was struggling with things that I was dealing with some major sensory overload scenarios, and those environments kind of created a mutual understanding or a mutual frustration, I would say, of things that weren't accessible to the blind and low vision community. And because of that frustration that I was going through myself in other scenarios, I kind of put my foot down and said, this doesn't work and I'm going to make it work.
What makes traditional crafting inaccessible? What barriers were existing that you've removed?
One of the biggest things is, I would say, cutting things, having to use a set of scissors or even a paper trimmer to trim up, a piece of paper from taking an 8.5 by 11 to making it into a card base, which is, I think it's 4 by 7. And that doesn't exist unless you're using probably a paper cutter tool that's in like an office space. Sometimes the older ones are a little more tactile with numbers and dots on those. And so because everything is pre-cut with the quarterly program and even the other program, there's metal dies, and then there's a sandwich board that's created with the paper and the metal. So once it goes through that crank system, that is how the paper is cut. And so once someone understands, even a fully sighted person understands how that sandwich board system goes in, and understands that metal die, it's not going to cut them because of the pressure that's needed to cut the paper. One, we've prevented safety concerns for the most part. If someone hasn't learned how to properly hold, scissors or some sort of other sharp piece. And then paper is pretty easy to line up with that. And then the other program, the quarterly program, everything's pre-cut and pre-adhesive. And then the instructions are very, step by step right now, with the goal of being able to add on different levels as there's more of an interest, as this continues to grow, for people that are like, okay, I want this to be a little more difficult, to make it a little more advanced even for them.
So you have kind of a beginner's program with the card making, and then, like you said, you can add more to it to make it more nuanced and more challenging.
Absolutely, yes.
Do you have specific accessibility principles at Be Tactile?
Yes, we do. And the biggest thing is that anyone, any disability or vision concern is able to access it. And primarily the focus is and always will be the low vision and blind community. We have grandparents that are blind that love to sit down and make these quarterly boxes with their grandkids to give them something finally that they can do as a family together. And so making sure that anyone, any age, young or old, and, families, whether it's a activity around a holiday or just because on a rainy day, of working on something together.
What about the kits? You talked about it, but can you expand on how they arrive to your customer's home?
Absolutely. So a person can contact me however they contact me, whether they find me on social or an email or through our website. Of course, with social or email, it would be something to the effect of, hey, I found you, I'm interested. How do I order? And I can say, is it best for me to give you a call and set up a time, so an appointment over the phone or Zoom, whatever's easiest? Or would you like the website? Are you able to access the website? I have several customers that have been with me before this started that will call or text me and say, hey, Jen, I want to order this, but I need help. And I'll call them and I'll go through the website with them as if their screen reader is reading it to them through their phone or their laptop, and explain to them, okay, I'm on the individual card page, or I'm on the quarterly box. Do you want one set of the box? Do you want to add on any of the add-on cards? And just walk them through, okay, so this card, some people want all the details of every single piece with every single card kit. And some people just say, just send it to me. And so I'll ask them, do you want the Braille greeting or just a standard greeting that's embossed, similar to regular stamping, but it's a little more accessible? Do you want, these are all the pieces that come in this kit. Do you want an additional one of those, or are you okay with, the set that comes in that box? Then I click checkout and we go through the checkout screen with the individual that typically will call me. She and I will get to that process, and then I'll say, okay, your address is still what, is saved in the system that only she has access to if she wanted to. And then I tell her, this is the price. Let me know when you're ready for a credit card. Sometimes she will have a family member help read her credit card to me, and I physically enter it in the system, and then I don't have access to that credit card ever again. Or someone goes through that entire process online, and I've gone through and really tried to explain each piece that's in each card kit and even the quarterly kits, all those pieces, all in one, so they have as much of a description as possible, because that's the other thing that really frustrates me, is the limited description for everyone to understand anything that's on the internet or website. Don't get me started on social.
Yeah.
So they'll get an email, hey, your order is placed. We're working on shipping it and packing and prepping right now. And then they'll get another email, probably a little more insight, especially if they're brand new to Be Tactile or Tactile Treasure, to help them understand. Maybe they wanted to add on another card. We're able to sneak that in at the last second typically. And then they will get kind of an intro video from me, welcoming them to kind of the Be Tactile family and explaining a little more description. That way anyone feels like they've kind of been around forever, whether they have or not. And then in that I believe the next email will explain every single kit in that quarterly box or the individual kit that they ordered, explaining every single piece that is received. Because my other frustration is I can send a packing slip, but it's not going to explain to them if you're low vision or blind, a piece of paper probably isn't going to mean anything besides, great, it's another thing I can't access. So glad you put it in an accessible box for me. And so an email comes with, this card has all of these pieces and it'll say times one or sometimes we have multiple of the same thing and it'll list that out. And then in the email, like a day or two estimated before that box arrives, we will send out the actual instructions. That way, some people want to go ahead and go through those videos or the audio written instructions a few times before they actually get their box, which I'm kind of type A like that too. So I understand there's all sides. And then we send an email a couple weeks after and ask someone for their opinion and survey, because how often are we really asked for our opinion and someone actually wants to listen to it, which is our focus, because your opinion matters, because we can't make any of our programs better if we don't know your opinions on them truly.
Absolutely. So it feels like it's very, very, very thorough. It also feels like there is a lot. Are you a one and only, or do you have helper people?
I have a few amazing volunteers, including my husband, who loves to actually help put stuff together and really put cards together for the examples for in-person stuff. But technically it is a one-woman show. But I am grateful for the volunteers. I have a niece that helps out when she's out of school and that sort of thing, and occasionally convince a parent or two from time to time to help out too.
Bravo to you. How about special occasions? Again, you mentioned holidays, but, in the spring, do you focus on some graduation, Mother's Day, Father's Day cards? Do you always have birthday cards available?
Absolutely. That is a great question and one that many people ask. So whatever there's a high request for, we try to keep that on hand. Now, some of those designs may change. So currently, we do have a wedding card that was a kind of add-on card we tried out. So that's online right now because it's wedding season here in the Midwest. And graduation was actually part of our spring quarter box back in April. So that's just kind of hung out on our website too. And just a simple, more of a black and gold graduation card. That way it fits for every school, high school, middle, whatever age group that is graduating for that. And then we do have some kind of more generic cake cards on our website. But are definitely able to add, if there's a specific greeting, someone says, oh, but I wanted to say this. If someone reaches out, we would love to work with them to make that even more accessible.
How do you ensure that a card is both visually appealing to the sighted people and accessible to the blind?
Absolutely. I love this question because I wanted to make sure that what you just asked applies for every single person. Because we have some people that just enjoy making these cards that are low vision or blind, and then they just have a collection of cards on hand because they just wanted something to do that is almost therapeutic for themselves. And then we have individuals that are blind that give the cards to someone that's blind, and then we have blind or sighted people that make them for, any occasion that they have for someone that may be blind or not. So the huge piece was originally some of the greetings were just standard stamped in ink onto that heavy cardstock and then applied, as a kit is put together. But it still bothered me because even if a person can't use their finger and figure out, what the greeting is, it's still accessible. There's still some tactile feels to the greeting and each of those pieces that are they're heat embossed. So it's kind of a process. You use a certain type of ink, and then you sprinkle the powder on it in any type of color that you choose. And then you use kind of almost like a tiny hair dryer or a heat gun to set that. And so there's that raised surface on it. And then, of course, there is the Braille greeting for those that want the Braille. And I love being able to add in the Braille. It helps me try to learn how to read Braille or be more Braille literate, honestly.
I was going to ask about Braille. So, do you use Braille large print and high contrast? Do you use all of them? Do people have a preference for one or the other? Does it vary amongst the cards?
So, I have someone that cuts Braille for me that is very well versed in Braille, reading Braille, and has for some time. So, that's how the Braille happens. And then there isn't necessarily large print. And the reason is because I'm using a stamp set that comes also with a coordinating metal die set. And there's not a way, because it's being physically stamped by hand by myself, there's not a way to make that any larger. And that is the one thing where I can't necessarily make that large print, but I work with what I have all at the same time to make it as accessible as possible.
I got you. How about pitfalls? This is something that's probably always evolving. Can you give an example of something that didn't work that you had to move on from?
That's one of the reasons that I love our survey is I had someone that they wanted everything in Braille, including the packing list, including the instructions, but not everyone reads Braille. And so I think that was a pitfall of overcoming, of understanding. I really had to do kind of some deep work to understand that my focus, my strength, my strong suit is creating these card kits, combining multiple stamp and metal die sets to make a gorgeous correlating card for whatever the occasion is. And understanding that as I try to learn Braille, Braille isn't my focus, but making the creating piece is a huge focus within our programs for someone to, as they're learning Braille through large print, on each person's ability is being able to take each of those pieces and making a really gorgeous card for any occasion.
That is amazing. How about prototyping? What does that look like? And do you test designs with blind individuals before final production?
I typically do. There's sometimes where I don't want to say lost track of time, but it's, if it's a busy season, sometimes that doesn't happen. But I try to actually plan our cards. Right now, they're being planned a year in advance or longer. So at the end of the year, I actually try to take about a month off from the business, which is, as a business owner, as a small business owner, is extremely hard to wrap your brain around. But I take kind of that time around the holiday off, kind of reset, figure out what our focus is for that next year, and continue to plan around that off and on through that kind of time period. So what I've started to do, and this has been hard to wrap my brain around because I have never had a wholesale background for those that are in business or have an understanding of how things are planned really a couple years in advance before they're even launched or thought of or prototyped. And so I sit down and I go through the designs that haven't been used because we don't use anything ever again. Once it's used, that design is used and we don't use it again unless it's requested as a special request or it's something that's a design that's available until it's not. And so
you're when you plan for the next year, are you doing it like you sit down and plan, next spring we're going to do these wedding cards kind of thing?
Right. Thank you. Yes. So I sit down. So last December, I sat down and I pulled out the sets that I'd already decided were going to be used in 2026. I pulled all of them out and cut quarter by quarter or color by color for all of those dies and kept them organized in their correlating sets. And then I went through and built one card at a time, thinking about how things go together, how to make them most accessible, thinking about sometimes there's cards I put together, trying to think about it visually and non-visually, and I realize, well, that piece is not very accessible to be able to take off the adhesive backing. And so a lot of times those pieces going through that first touch with the prototypes will get pulled and won't end up on a card, or some of the pieces right now we will assist and put multiple pieces that are kind of a layering piece that are hard to pull off together to make it more accessible to assemble.
Are you also doing managing the website then side of things? I mean, you kind of said you're a one-woman show, so I mean, you're making all, it sounds like you're doing this creative process. Then you're really managing the accessibility portion, and then are you also doing the website as well?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so you are literally doing it all. When you include Braille, you mentioned somebody else does the Braille. Do you emboss it on the card, or do you use stickers that have Braille on them and then you add those to the card?
So the Braille are all sticker sheets, and then that makes it easier for someone that does or doesn't want to use Braille, so they can choose where it goes, the placement, all of those things for that.
I know that I already talked about you wearing all the hats, but I just thought of another one. Are you then doing also the accounting and the business side of things as well?
And the social media and the emails that are sent out, yes.
Okay, you literally are doing it all. What has been a really fun, heartwarming, or surprising piece of feedback you've received from a recipient?
I would say just getting to watch people in action in person in local events. You and I actually met at a recent convention, and getting to see people's eyes light up for the first time that came in and said, well, I probably can't do this, or I'm supporting so-and-so. And they get to sit down and they get to put it together. And sometimes people want more hands-on, step by step by step, like they get with the card kits that are available. And sometimes people just figure it out on their own. I made the instructions available this last time, and it was really cool because just getting to experience that with someone that's experiencing our programs for the very first time is just the most heartwarming, because I get to watch those expressions or get that feedback. I had a sister that was there for the very first time getting to experience that organization, and she was like, I really, I know my sister's going through programs to learn how to be fully independent, but getting to actually watch her be as independent as she is right now, and getting to see all these individuals that have gone through programming so they can travel the world if they want to and be fully independent. It was just so cool to have that moment and really being able to share about how grassroots anyone truly can be if they want to, because we have the choice every day.
Absolutely. I love that. Where can folks find you?
Yes, so we're on social media, mostly Facebook, Instagram, betactile.co or betactile. And our email is info, INFO, at betactile.co. Leave off the M. And then our website is also betactile.co. So our website is betactile.co.
Beautiful. We always wrap up with this question. This is community conversation. Jennifer, what does community mean to you?
I would say community is getting to spend time with those that you have a mutual interest in or that you just enjoy spending time with.
Love it. Jennifer Charleston with Be Tactile, thank you so much for sharing all that you do with our community of listeners today.
Thank you for your time.
You've been listening to Community Conversations on Radio Talking Book. This is the program where we dialogue with voices from the Omaha community. And this is the Radio Talking Book Network in Omaha, Nebraska. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for 50 years. Radio Talking Book is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS FM in Omaha and statewide through the facilities of Nebraska Public Media. Thank you all for being loyal Radio Talking Book listeners and supporters.